Hey everyone, Jeff Gordon from Writers Boot Camp. We're making great progress on creative currency as a platform so far, going into our 10th interview in a couple of minutes with an old friend, Vince Thompson, longtime alumnus, very successful in business and the digital era. He has a great history and will offer a lot of insight in addition to his new book coming out, his fiction book, called The Lockup Period, which will be available, I think, in October. Feel free to subscribe. It helps us a lot at The Writers Boot Camp on YouTube. Your timing is impeccable because if you're not early, you're late. So Vince, welcome. It's great to see you. Can you believe that I think we met in 1986 or 87?
Absolutely. And it
I
was
went back to grad school in fall of 87 at USC's Peter Stark program.
and I knew you before that. So I met
Yeah,
you in 86. And I think it was probably the spring of 86 I took through the story structure.
right. And I was running it at the time, which was a great experience.
Then I was in the writer's boot camp class that we did in your apartment.
Yes, but also I think we had a couple of meetings at an ad agency in West LA. Remember at a conference table?
That shaped me. Amber,
April.
April.
And I believe that was either the second or the third group in fall of 89.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? Guess where I went? You'll love this. I didn't realize the other night that there's a Baskin Robbins on Pico hidden in a strip mall not too far from Bergamot Station. So, of course, I thought of you because remember we
Wow.
would go to lunch and we weren't sure where we were going, but then we would go for ice cream afterwards. That's when
It
we were
was,
starting out. We had a part of our days, incredibly free.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
was I was I was waiting tables or maitre ding at night. I had the whole day, and we would drive around for about 25 minutes or 45
right.
minutes trying to tacos or burgers or I don't know. Could you eat a salad? Like,
Remember that place El Patio on Wilshire that had
uh,
had Chicago hot dogs?
no, I do.
So so wasn't one of your, maybe it wasn't your first script, but it was maybe a second script called Stringer?
That was my first script.
That
Yeah,
was the first. Okay.
yeah.
And what was Stringer based on? Was that a journalistic
That was a neat.
homage?
Yeah, and later, a great actor. It was in a movie about that. His name will come to me. But let me tell you what Stringer was based on. I grew up in Sacramento. I was an explorer scout at the TV station. I was crazy about broadcast television. And what I learned at the television station back in the early 80s is there was this guy. He looked like Wolfman Jack. And he basically worked the night after the late show from midnight to 6 a.m. And he monitored police scanners in the back of an old limousine. And he sat in the back of an old limousine with a bunch of scanners and his equipment. And then he would run out to traffic accidents and fires and kind of horrific stuff that happens in the middle of the night.
Wow.
And he would shoot it. And then he would deliver three quarter inch tapes to four news stations in town. And he had a deal that they would pay him if they used it, something like back then, 40
Right.
bucks. Yeah.
And
So
did you know him personally?
I rode with him. I went out nights with him. Uh, he was a very unique guy. His wife was blind. She listened to the scanners at
Wow.
home and called him, and he had a great career doing it. And so I've always been attracted to writing about people who have interesting jobs. I think it's very fun to explore people's careers and then try to build a story
Well,
around.
also it tells me that early on you understood how media companies worked
Yeah,
operationally.
yeah.
And for as a segue, and thanks for doing this. I think you're our 10th creative currency
Oh, wow,
interview. We're on
wow.
number 10 already. Shira was the first.
Oh, sure. He's the best.
Yes, Shira Lazar. So, can you describe the segue to your consulting, or was it initially you started off in sales and then because of that experience segued into consulting? Because you were at a very early stage involved with Facebook. I think you consulted Napster, didn't you? And then you ran basically sales training, if I'm not mistaken, West Coast for AOL for something like 7 years, right?
Yeah, yeah. Ad sales and sales training. I had a lot. So I'll back you up a little bit. I've always
Yeah.
been interested. I was always interested in film. I was interested in film. I was interested in movies. I was interested in television. When I was 15 years old, when I was 13 years old, I'd been a TV station Explorer Scout, which was like the scouting program. When I was 15 years old, I pitched myself as a host of the Easter Seal Telethon in Sacramento. Um, they put me in to be the kids host. When I hosted, the guy that ran the local rock station came in and said, "Hey, we should give you a job in the radio business." And they gave me a job as a promotions assistant working in radio in Sacramento. I didn't. They hired me to drive the Croy van. The station was KROY. They hired me to drive the van. They couldn't get insurance on me. So they hired my buddy. So I worked in radio. I was on air in radio. I did 2 years on air. I did weekends in an FM station. I went to USC.
I mean, I knew you had the gift of gab, but I didn't realize you were actually on air.
Well, I wasn't a talk radio host. I literally set up songs but it was magical time. We put Steely Dan's Gaucho on the air
Wow.
and a Message in a Bottle by the Police. It didn't make airplay, and I played it for 3 months before they brought it back on the radio. I loved all that. So anyway, radio. I got out of college super naive. I thought, well, no, I'll produce movies. But I didn't have any money. And I met you. I'd gone through the screenwriting class, and I thought, well, I'll try to write some stuff. So I spent 7 years writing.
You were very productive.
Well, I think I wrote 5 scripts over the course of 7 years, and I did work per hire.
Right. You also, I think,
watched
at Mirabelle, and we were talking about Mirabelle and that whole strip right there,
Yeah.
not too far from Ladome back in the day, and like Nikki Blair's, those famous haunts. I think when I came to see you one day, we met Henry Jaglin, the
Henry was
independent
there.
writer-director. Right.
Henry was almost there every day. Yeah.
Exactly. That was his kind of almost office, right?
Yeah. 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 That
But
was
so
a great.
you had a knack for connecting with people. Your disposition is super authentic, Vince. I
Well,
mean,
thank you.
you don't have to put on airs. You just naturally connect with people, and you're intuitive about who they are and what
Well,
they need.
I
Whether
enjoy
it's yeah,
I enjoy people. I love people. I love their stories. I think that I'm comfortable talking to a lot of people because I waited tables for a lot of years. And so I was always rolling up on hungry people who didn't necessarily care about me. And they just needed to get their thing done. And I needed to communicate with them in a way that said, hey, you're safe with me. I know what you want, and I'll take care of you. And so I think just getting
it's
that,
awesome.
yeah, pattern matching.
Were you also thinking of acting back then?
I took, it's funny. When I took your former job at Truby's for a short period of time, I tried out for Jeff Corey, the acting teacher, really
Right.
brilliant teacher, and I studied under him in Malibu for a short period of time. His classes were wild, and I think it'd be fun for you to talk to somebody who studied with him.
No,
But
I knew some people who were very close to him. Yeah.
he was a very, very talented guy, but he was
Was he the one
Freudian acting,
was he the coach that Gina Davis thanked when she won her Oscar?
Yeah, I know he's Dustin Hoffman's coach, and anyway. So I did it for a little while. Yeah.
And then what was your segue into media and sales? And as a consultant, you've got such a depth of experience, and you've worked with startups, and especially in the digital age, portal founders, platforms. And I just wonder what your perspective is that of that is today.
Well, what happened, Jeff, is I waited tables, maitre d' restaurants, and wrote screenplays till the age of 29. I had gotten a rewrite over at Warner Brothers. I got a nice check. I bought my wife Jackie a diamond ring, got engaged. You were there, and and I thought, I'm walking around in my bathrobe every day, and I got to be in the business world in some way. And I had a friend who worked in William Morris, and he'd gone in the TV business, and he said, "You should join me here." Flash forward, I did 5 years in local broadcast television. The internet was starting to happen in the 90s or very early 90s. I got very excited about it. I moved to San Francisco to work at a startup. I
Yeah.
When I was at that startup, I wrote an article about how wonderful it was to sell online advertising because you could work directly with brands. And that article was ripped out by Bob Pittman's mentor, a guy named Charlie Warner, who was consulting at AOL. They called me up, and all of a sudden, I went from a guy who had been sales manager in Santa Barbara with a $3 million budget in the span of 8 months. I had a $330 million budget, and 9 people to 40 people, and town car at my back end, and a couple great offices, and the company was booming. And so I had a
Hmm.
really exciting experience through 7 years at AOL up and down, and then a very short period of time at Facebook.
And then what was the inspiration to write your first book, which was a business book called Ignited?
So I worked, I loved my AOL career working in a big company, but very painful to work in a big company. All the studies say that people work in smaller companies are happier. Big companies very bureaucratic. But what I realized working in a big company is that the mid-level manager had a lot more power than they realized. That the mid-level manager was somebody who understood the vision at the top, the ability in the middle, and the customer demand on the street. And by understanding those stuff, they were the best person to innovate the model. In our world, entrepreneurs start the first business model, they get it going, but the world changes, and there have to be people who innovate the model. And in companies that really work well, that mid-level management's empowered to innovate the model. So I wrote a book that was really a love letter to those people who work in mid-level management, and that was the genesis of that
Were
business.
you trying to implement change in
I was
the
trying to
industry?
I was trying to help mid-level managers realize that they had a lot more power than they did. So I
Right.
outlined 7 ignition points that I teach through the book. And since Anthropic has stolen the book, you can just ask Anthropic, it'll tell you
Well,
anything you want to know.
you know what I was going to ask about that because I just saw there's a settlement,
Yes.
but I made a note that are you concerned with your material being,
Uh,
not just plagiarized but absorbed?
so my book Ignited was one of the books absorbed in that, and I got to participate in the class. And I think I'll be paid something like $3,500. I don't know exactly yet. I thought it was great. Like the judge in the class said, there's publishers and there's authors, and the author relationship is like 10% or something of what the total is with the traditional publishing industry because they got skin in the game. But the judge came out and said, we're going to split the funds between author and publisher. So
Oh, okay.
I think that's kind of nice. It rewards some of the people, but still that stuff was taken to build that, and that's not good.
Is it almost a compliment to be on that list?
I don't know. I think they just took all traditionally published books. I don't know. I don't think of it that
Right.
way.
Do you see this as the
With
Wild West right now, and the issues of the political issue of data centers and resources? Do you think AI is what it's cracked up to be?
I think that we're learning how to use AI. I think we're misusing it in a lot of ways. Hopefully, we'll learn really positive ways to use AI. We're just going to have to live with it in our world. There's some things that AI can be really fantastic at, and it's amazing in terms of drug discovery. It's very helpful for a marketing person. Things. I don't think we should be writing with AI. Certainly, as creative people, we shouldn't be writing with
Right.
AI.
I mean, I don't
And
know
I,
if you saw that parody of our old ad where I said AI for writers, authentic intelligence, and that our tools are the prompts you need for
yeah,
professional writing.
yeah.
Just
No,
trying to,
I think,
stay open.
yeah, and I think there will be ways that, AI plays a big role and rightfully so. It's good for research. It can be good for research. It can be good in lots of ways. And
Right.
I'm not particularly offended by using it to create video elements. And it might mean that a lot more people can make movies that didn't make movies, and that should be
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So I remember with Ignited that you were learning as an author about publishing. And were there any decisions you made then? And how is that different from the impending release of your new book?
Oh, listen, we're 20 years in between these two projects, essentially. Ignited was a book that I pitched to Big Five publishers. Second meeting, got a deal, and fell into that nonfiction book category. And it was a great experience. I was able to speak internationally on it and do some keynotes around the country. I kind of learned a little bit about that life, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. But it was a great experience for me. In terms of the publishing companies, they're pretty amazing. They have huge sales forces. They have real smart people. They do their best to help you with your book, but it's really on you to sell your book. They get distribution, which is brilliant, and they get sales. They have a sales force that talks it up, and
And so
and
give me a nuance of that or a function that you provided on your own to help create a wedge and some inroads.
well, I think when I did that book back then, I hired my own PR. I created my own
Okay.
marketing initiatives. I hustled like hell to sell books. I created events. I did things. Nowadays, what's interesting is I've written a Silicon Valley crime thriller called The Lockup Period, coming out October 20th. There we go. All right. There's my
And
okay.
where can our alumni get advanced copies or
Vince,
put in their,
Yeah, Vince Thompson, author.com. And if anybody is an advanced reader with a relationship with NetGalley or Edelweiss, um, NetGalley, you can even get access to the audio. Just get in there and I'll approve you. You can send me an email, Vince at Vince Thompson Author. Let me know you're coming in through that channel, and I'll just approve you to get early access to it. But if not, I'd love it if people bought it, and it's
right?
available. Most places books are sold. But what I was going to say is, I went through the process. I got an agent. I really wanted the validation that I was a good writer. I wanted the industry to buy my book so that I wouldn't have to put myself out there. That didn't happen. So I decided to self-publish the book. The wonderful thing is there's so many talented industry executives and veterans that are available to you as freelancers that I, through my self-publishing, can do just about everything a big publisher can do, except I just don't have a sales force that's out selling it into bookstores. And I'm sure there's some other things too. I'm probably underestimating all the great things they do. But for me, I'm really enjoying the process. I pick my cover, I'm buying promotions, I'm partnering here and there, I'm pitching bookstores, I'm pitching librarians, you know, uh,
And back when you hired some PR help 20 years ago,
yeah.
and now how are you calculating the ROI, the rate of return, the
Well, the
return on investment, you know?
yeah, and PR has always been one of those things where the typical industry bills you a monthly retainer, and then you
Yeah,
look at
and
what
they
you
can't
get.
guarantee anything, and they
And
tell you that up front.
you get a bunch of impressions, and you hope that it translated. I'm building a writing career. I've got another novel in the tank, and I'm working on my third. And for me, at this stage of where I am, I'm looking forward to the next 10 or 15 years writing novels and putting them out there. So I'm investing in my career. I'm not doing it to a crazy extent, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm spending money. I'm spending money to do this because I'm trying to develop a user base and people that are interested in my stuff. My lane is kind of the collision of innovation and greed. So there's financial misdoings, there's smart people behaving badly, Every theme is related to startups and tech or something in that world.
So your expertise as a business consultant and your understanding of that world is definitely brought to bear in decisions you've made for story points and characters and
I'll
you
give you
know
an example.
twists and
When
turns.
I'll give you an example. When I left Facebook in 2005, I was there for a very short period of time, but I left and I had some equity in the company. In 2008, I took that equity and sold some of it on Wall Street to a big hedge fund. It was the first time anybody did it, and I didn't tell anybody.
That's
But 3 years,
concerned. That's considered the secondary market, right?
yeah. And so in 2008, no, 2008, I sold it. 2011, Brad Stone from Business Week called me up, someone to write an article. I said, I'm not going to cooperate. He said, well, help me, because if I get it wrong, I said, well, I'll tell you a little bit. So he wrote an article where he basically gave me credit for helping kickstart Silicon Valley's liquidity model, which changed. And what I mean by that is that people owned private shares in companies would find a way to sell those shares before those shares went public. They might invest in something when it's worth 10 million, it might be worth 400 million. They found ways to get their money out. They didn't have to wait to the IPO. So there's a big rush. Companies came into this
Right.
secondary market. When companies flooded this secondary market, well, there were a lot of people who showed up, and Russian oligarchs, dark money, money that couldn't be confirmed. Weird stuff was going on, and this is a market that's really unregulated. So
Because
there's
they're
no wonder.
private sales, but then did there have to be approval by a board in order to sell your shares?
Well, the boards of the companies oftentimes had right of first refusal. So if you own shares in the company, you tell them they'd have the right of refusal to buy you back. But what's happened is that there's those transactions that happen, but then beyond that, there were other financing transactions that happened. Today in the Wall Street Journal, there's an article about people who bought stock in SpaceX through
Yeah.
independent operators who packaged those stocks in what we call SPVs, special purpose vehicles, that are basically LLCs set up to own shares and then redistribute them. Well, these people found out that they actually didn't own the shares, and the shares were sold long before, and they didn't participate in the IPO. And so there's been a lot of shady business with
Hmm.
this area, and that stuff intrigues me a little bit.
Is that something that Elon is purported to know about?
I think anybody who participates in startup financing has seen a little bit of an underbelly develop, and I think most people avoid it. And I think it's small. I'm not saying that it's completely rampant, but I will say that
But
it's
your
out there.
experience and your witness to that allowed you to tailor aspects and facets of Silicon Valley to your story,
That's it.
to the
That's it.
lockup. What does the lockup period mean literally?
The lockup period literally means the time in which somebody has shares in a company as an insider. The company goes public and they can't sell those shares for 90 or 180 days. And that's the period that they're holding something valuable they can't get liquidity out of, and they sure hope that it goes up. And it creates a tense period.
And it's
I was
hard
going
to
to say,
get loans against capital loans against that.
I don't know, probably, yeah, probably. But I was going to say, Jeff, that having worked in the entertainment business, and then having worked in the tech business, it felt to me like the tech business was having its get shorty moment, where mobsters and crazy people are all rolling in to try to get a piece of the action. And so that's intriguing to me when you combine those elements.
Yeah, fertile ground to write about and to write
Yeah.
from. Um, you know, so many of our alumni have become successful with books published. Recently, we started an initiative called The Next 1000, which is to discover and find the additional 1,000 success stories that we may not know about from our alumni community, because including major credits in television and movies and major awards and books, that's already the first 1,000. Hundreds of books published, because when you practice story structure in movies and TV, everything gets better, including your prose. And exercises like the 363 help magically, to improve all the choices and the ability for a writer to see their words. Is there anything that you recall from way back in 1989, 90 that you've been able to adapt either in Ignited, or obviously you were in basic training for a short time?
Well, learning kind of the elements of structure. The 363 used to have the 5 something then too. I'm trying to remember
The
what
5 story components, which are decisions you make about your premise line. I hate the phrase log line because it's barely a setup. It's barely a pithy rejoinder. So if premise line is a formatted cause and effect statement, which is conversationally can be a better elevator pitch. Not that it's designed for that. It's designed for the writer as a development tool to tell a complete story. So the 5 story components are not only decisions about the story that make up every story to varying degrees, but also inherent sources of material.
Yeah.
They're component decisions and component sources. So then that goes into every premise line, and those decisions go into every sequence statement. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, listen, it's been a long time since we worked directly together in that way.
We need to do it. We need to do it again.
I know.
Need to do it again.
As a thank you for this.
Yeah.
You can participate in one of the fall as my guest in one of the 10-week basic trainings, just to
I love it.
Accelerate the process on the next project, or to do an adaptation or a different format, because writers can do, half hour and hour long pilots, 2 hours movies, books, nonfiction narrative, documentary, organization, that kind of thing. Because if there's anything that I'm proud of, it's that the tools are non-formulaic, but they're sophisticated, and the writers with more experience, even though it's called basic training, get even more out of it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think I know that I would. The beauty of this stuff, right, is we're just continually learning and pushing forward, and the revelations come to us as we go. And it's like the writing is writing, right?
Of course, that's a great slogan. But what I'm amazed is that you've been on the front line in this age. We only started getting on social media because it's almost impossible to be in touch by email as regularly. And 15 years ago, when Facebook really took off, we had 60,000 people in our database, and it felt like a compromise. And it doesn't always lead to business, but there's certain kinds of businesses. There are a lot of artists and content creators who have businesses with just a TikTok or an Instagram, and they don't have a website.
Yeah.
With our history and our legacy, the website is continuing to improve, and there's a lot that we want to do with it. But can you say anything on a practical level that you enjoy or that you've recommended to people because of social media? Let's say, the next 10, 15 years, you're writing 6 more books, and some of our alumni are that prolific, by the way.
Yeah.
And we can speak off camera on some of these people that we've realized.
I'm amazed at the writers and the talent that you've had through. And I just, I think I knew you before you started this. And you've always been a guy that everybody loves and loves to talk to, and you're always kind of in the center of the room. Well, and it was like you just started putting your arms out farther and farther and bringing more and more people into the community. And then you listened to the community and built a business based on the community's needs. And it's really kind of brilliant. I'm always
Thank
thinking, you have a very desirable place in life that you've created for yourself.
Well, I appreciate that. The industry has been challenging recently, but I stick to the philosophy that I want to give people what they need and not what they think they want. Because you know how so many writers and artists starting out have that outsider's view of the craft, and you as a creator cannot afford to have that outsider perspective. I mean, it's different. Having a distinguishing idea is not the same that's a different kind of outsider. That's a positive, but you can't, you just have to be professionally oriented and not just playing the lottery, with your creative life.
Uh,
But is there anything else on a tech level, a platform level, the way you're consulting companies and how that might be transferable to somebody's individual brand as a creator?
I'm obviously I was doing business before we had all of these tools, and I think these tools are they're valuable. We can debate their merits, but if you want to have success, it's built one relationship at a time. And those relationships, these tools might enable us to begin those relationships or have some of that. But at the end of the day, people have to trust us. They have to believe in what we're doing and they have to want to spend time with us. And that's from us demonstrating our care and interest in others. And
Hmm.
and I think sometimes with all these tools, we think, well, nobody wants to hear from me, or I shouldn't be so forward. But the phone is still a great tool. Inviting people out, it's a good tool. Asking people's advice and just building relationships and thinking about what you can do for other people. And if you do those things, then communities come together and you're successful. If you don't do those things and you think you can use these tools to kind of hack your way into some kind of community, you find it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So I
Right, it
think,
ends up being somewhat hollow.
yeah.
I've been impressed on your give back the last few years, Vince. Can you describe in a couple sentences what your extracurricular, philanthropic,
Just on the social good stuff.
civic,
I sat down
interests?
a dozen years ago. I sat down with Peter Samuelson, real impressive film producer, has done about 20 films, and he's a creator of nonprofits. He's a serial creator of nonprofits, and he's just a brilliant guy at sharing a vision, getting people together, and raising funds for these things. He got behind foster youth and said, "This is an underrepresented class of people, and they don't have the resources and the parenting and all that we give kids in high school when it comes to getting into college." So he partnered with other people, created a great charity. I've been on the board for 12 years. We help kids in the foster care system get into college. We run the
Great.
program at a dozen universities in the country. The typical foster kids, 10% go to college, 3% graduate. In our case, we graduate like 95% of them from high school, which is stunning, but we get about 84% of those students into college. And so our success numbers are amazing. It's called First Star, firststar.org. And anybody can reach out to
Unbelievable.
me on that too. That's been really rewarding and wonderful.
No, I was blown away, and maybe you had told me a few years ago. And my mom, one of the things we were most proud of, she had a master's and an MSW from
Right.
Wisconsin, and she was the only woman in her math class in 1945, but she placed hundreds of children in homes in adoption in Chicago, which is another reason why I'm able to ask a lot of intuitive questions because she probably interrogated us growing up. But she was able to keep the separation from what she had witnessed and that affecting our family life and childhood. But what an elegant and amazing person. But I
Yeah.
think it may have been you. Had heard the 8% number, not 10%, but that 8% of foster children don't go to college,
Well, eight
or let
percent
alone
do go. 8% do go.
do
Ninety-two
go
percent.
too. Yeah, 92% don't, and that
It,
was
it's terrible.
depressing.
Yeah. Let me just throw another number at you. The average student who's in the foster care system and is in high school changes placements 4 times. So if you're watching this in Los Angeles, you could have potentially have a student be in Lancaster or Torrance. And so when these students move, they lose their credits. They don't, many don't even graduate high school. We assign educational mentors to make sure they do. But when you move every 6 or 8 or 9 months, it's,
And
there's,
in addition to funding, what's the essential need that you reach out for, or that the board or the volunteers reach out to do?
the students need a consistent presence in their life and somebody who has shared experience. So we run programs where we hire former foster youth who are currently in college to mentor our high school students who want to get into college. And that's
Right.
successful. But LA's got some really great foster charities. The Pritzker Foundation's done some amazing things, and there are there's some really great organizations that
Right.
folks can get involved in. Yeah.
Well, it's great, Vince, that you give back, and thank you for giving us your time today for this series.
My pleasure.
And I
Absolutely.
hope to see you soon, and I'll follow up too if you want to go through in the fall.
Well, we will absolutely, and there will
Everybody
be
reach
October
out to get
20th.
the lockup period.
Yeah.
So right now it's, if people contact you or find it, it's a pre-order, right?
It's a pre-order. Yeah. October 20th it comes out, and there'll be some fun
Great.
events and some stuff going on. So
Yeah, and we'll help promote, when
Love it.
when you need.
Thank
All right,
you.
have a great afternoon. Thanks, Vince. We appreciate you.
Okay, absolutely. My pleasure. Take good care.
Okay,
Thanks.
see you soon.
Great seeing you,
Bye.
Jeff.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.